Dear friends, welcome back to my channel Let's Read. In my previous video, I had uploaded a story named The Killer written by Ernest Hemingway. Today in this video, I will be discussing about the summary, theme analysis, plot analysis and moral analysis of the story. So let's start with the analysis. So basically, the story revolves around 6 characters. These 6 characters can be broadly classified into 3 categories. First, the hostage, second, the victim, and third, the killer or the hitman. Okay? So in the first category of hostage, Nick Adams, George, and Sam the cook are the hostage. Out of them, the person named George owns a restaurant named Henry's Lunchroom where people come to eat their dinner and suppers. In the next category of the shooters, Al and Max are the 2 sharpshooters who were there in the Henry's lunchroom to shoot Ole Andreson. Ole Andreson lies in the third category of the victim and he is a Swedish heavyweight fighter. Next in the story, you'll come across Hirsch's boarding house, which is a place where Ole Andreson was staying, and Mrs. Bell, who was a person taking care of the boarding house on behalf of Mrs. Hirsch. So moving ahead, where there are certain points which are very important to be remembered in this story. First, The Killers is a short story written by world famous American writer Ernest Hemingway. Second, it was first time published in 1927 in the Scribner's magazine. The theme of this short story is death, friendship, and the purpose of life. Here, death personifies that one should not fear the death and should face it with bravery. Second, friendship, as in Nick Adams, George fulfilled their duty of friendship as Ole Andreson was their regular customer and they thought it as their obligation to warn him about the upcoming danger. Number 4, it is a story of atmosphere, horror, and suspense. Satire is a typical weapon of Hemingway in all his stories. Next, this story is a satire on the law enforcing American agencies. Now, this is because after desperate attempts of Nick Adams, the shooters were roaming free and bravely in the streets. Next, despite Anderson's lot of complaints, the criminal were not being arrested and hence it supports the above point. Next, Al and Max, the 2 killers, are after Ole Anderson to kill him just to oblige their friend. So here the context of friendship on which the story was written comes into being. Next, they make the crew of the restaurant hostage, use abusive language, and create unbearable horror. Next, they make the crew of the restaurant hostage, use abusive language, and create unbearable horror. Somewhere readers may guess an upcoming event, but then surprisingly something opposite happens. The plot structure of this short story has certain and unexpected endings. Luckily, Anderson does not come there on that particular day. The killers, after waiting, leave the place, but leave a looming shadow of death. Here, to be precise, Ole Anderson is an isolated character who, because of some certain reasons, has given up the struggle to escape from the killers. It should be specifically mentioned that Ole Andreson is not a coward person. He is actually fed up of running from death. His solemn accusation to death actually ennobles his mind and he develops a spiritual readiness to accept the eventuality. So now, out of obligation, Nick Adams visits Ole Anderson's room to inform him about the danger, but he does not pay much attention to him because he has made up his mind and he develops a spiritual readiness to accept death. The restlessness is projected not only in the mind of the character but in the mind of the readers also. Moving ahead with the theme analysis of the story, the theme of fear is portrayed in the story soon after the 2 unknown killers enter the lunchroom. It's very obvious when 2 people dressed in overcoat, hat, gloves enter into the lunchroom with their guns. It will certainly create an atmosphere of fear. Further, one of them, known as Al, takes Sam and Nick in the kitchen and tie them up as hostage. The writer through these two killers create a mysterious atmosphere. Readers actually become fearful when they realize the whole situation. There is a deep depiction of horror in this story. Further, the next most important theme of the story is death. We see the killers want death of Ole Andreson at any cost, but he was lucky enough as he did not turn up that day. However, it did not save him from death permanently. Instead, it was postponed. Next, Ernest Hemingway prefers death over slavery. Slavery in the sense that one should not become slave to death. So basically the author tries to convey here that death is a certain and a definite approach. It waits for everyone. Ernest Hemingway is of the view that a man should live until he dies. So if you fear from death, then you die daily. If death creates horror in the heart of a person, then he is not living, but he is actually counting the days of his life. Further, you will come across that Ole Andreson does not fear from death. It is an unexpected twist in the plot of the story. The theme portrays death through Ole Andreson. When the killers leave lunchroom after a long wait, Nick Adams is sent to inform Ole Andreson that two unknown persons are planning his murder. But you will come to know that Ole Andreson does not fear from death. It is definitely an unexpected twist. Readers also guess that Ole Andreson would do something to save himself. Maybe he would run away from town, or maybe he informed to the police. But nothing of this sort happens. Rather, the opposite happens. Ole Andreson's acceptance to death is also visible from the fact that when Nick suggests him to call police and inform them about the whole situation, Ole Andreson actually denies it, while saying that if death wants to come, let it come. He goes on to sleep without any fear, and instead of running away from the death, he faces it in a very courageous manner. Further in the story, after doing analysis of courage, fear, and death, the author Ernest Hemingway forces his reader to handle difficult circumstances with courage. Hence, his saying, "Live courageously and die honorably," becomes another major theme of the story. So basically, the author here wants to say that a person should face every problem with courage. At least he should try and face the situation and not to escape from the situation. Further in the story, you will come across two kind of characters. One is Ole Andreson, who is brave and courageous enough to accept the death and situation as they come, while second are the George and Nick Adams, who escape from every problematic situation. So there is a comparison between the two type of people, and those who have the courage become the hero at the end of the story. Like Ole Andreson had accepted death and the other two person fear from death, Nick wants to flee away from town for a while. However, Sam is already terrified after the whole incident. So therefore there is a stark comparison between the two kind of people, and those who have the courage to face death, they ultimately become the hero. Ernest Hemingway has also written that dying was nothing and he had no picture of it nor fear of it in his mind. Moving ahead with the plot and technique analysis of the story, the complete story is written in the form of dialogues. We can hardly find any opinion of the narrator in the whole story. So if you have read the entire story, you will find there is a conversation going on between the hostage and the shooters, followed by a conversation between the hostage and the victim Ole Andreson. The author Ernest Hemingway has put situation in front of his readers like a dramatist. Most of the very important and relevant things are hidden in the dialogues of the story. However, some dialogues are really ambiguous. Readers have to actually go back to study the entire story again in order to understand them. The end of the story is totally unexpected. Further, the end of the story is entirely unexpected. Ole Andreson becomes a moralistic hero of the story. As already discussed, the author prefers every person to face difficult situation with courage, and therefore the person who faces courageously become hero at the end of the story. Now moving ahead with the moral analysis, the killers come, tie two persons, wait for a Swedish prize fighter, However, he does not come, they leave. The story ends where it starts, but symbolically and deep down it has certain meanings. There is a moral for everyone in the story, due to which there is no denying the fact that mostly Ernest Hemingway's heroes win morally and not physically, like Ole Andreson, who actually accepted his death and became the moral hero of the story. So, friends, next moving ahead are the frequently asked question on the story The Killer. Question 1. Describe the appearance of the two men who came to the restaurant. Number 2. Give a short description of the Henry's lunchroom. Number 3. Describe the appearance of the two men who came to the restaurant. Dear friends, this was the end of the summary and analysis part. I really hope that it was helpful to you. If you need answers to the questions mentioned at the last, do drop your messages in the comment section. Do not forget to like, share and subscribe the channel. If you want to have summary and analysis of any other story, then drop the name of the story in the comment section.